Welcome to this webinar about the core model. Title is Strategic Content Design with the Core Model. I could have called this many things. I like to think about it as a common sense approach to digital strategy and design. And this is also the title of the forthcoming book. What you see in the background here is the place I come from on the west coast of Norway. So it's kind of, Norway has beautiful nature. But to quote Magnus Revang, who's the CPO at OpenStream and the former research vice president at Gartner, he says that one of the greatest benefits of being Norwegian is not abundant nature and oil riches. It's the fact that core model has been available for us to us for years. So if you, I guess many of you don't know the core model, but in Norway it's being used by hundreds of companies, organizations, large and small. So the logos you see here are respectively Norway's largest bank, Norway's largest insurance company, Norway's largest telco, Norway's largest municipality, and so on. So we have startups and we have public sector, and a tenfold of digital agencies are using this method to connect people and content and strategy in a timeless way. So, and Jim Kalbach, who's the author of The Jobs to be Done playbook and Mapping Experiences, once said that the core model is the most famous method that nobody knows about. That's I'm trying to kind of do something about this with this webinar. So the core model, it's super simple, and but the simplicity in it is what makes it so powerful. So to again quote Stephen P. Anderson, it says it's brilliant in its simplicity, and it can stand alone or work alongside any number of other methods. But more fundamentally, it will transform how you approach the design of digital products. So I've been working on this book for many years. I published it in Norwegian 2 years ago. And now the English translation is almost here, entitled Common Sense to Approach to Digital Strategy and Design. And I've learned the hard way that you should never publish, you should never tell the exact publishing date, because it has been pushed back a few times, but now it's due to launch in autumn, probably October. But it is printed. I have it here. So I made a small preprint for Confab, the Content Strategy Conference, and I have a handful of books here that I will give out to people who ask me a question. And a few of you have done that already beforehand, but you can ask me questions still. So if you look down to the right in Google Meet, there's a icon with a triangle and a square and some circle. And just ask me a question there, and I'll draw 3 winners of the book. And the book is it's kind of it's colorful. It's an easy read. You can read it in a few hours, and you can use it as a you can look it up whatever you're wondering when you're running a core workshop. So it's a very practical book. But hi, Hi, my name is Are Halland. I've been working in the industry for about a quarter of a century. I've been doing digital strategy, user experience, content strategy, content design, information architecture, etc. So I worked as a consultant and I worked in-house. And for the last couple of years, I've been working for myself as an independent and working full-time to bring people the simple power of the core model through. I do keynotes, I do training, I also do mentoring in user-centered methodology and digital strategy, and the core model, of course. So, and I am the creator of this core model, which I'll present to you today. And the agenda is I'll take you through 7 challenges that we are facing in digital product development, and that the core model is kind of able to address. I'll introduce you to the core model and how it works, and I'll tell you about the core workshop training that I am organizing, so you can learn the method in depth. And of course, I'll answer your questions at the end. So without further ado, this is the core model. It's a very simple canvas, and it has 6 elements that are easy to recognize. They have colors and shapes, but the core sheet is really simple, but I like to think of it as a kind of a Kinder Egg surprise, because it has power under the hood that makes it, because it's so simple, you can use it as a, what it does, it gives you a holistic perspective on the products and services you're working on, from marketing to user experience to strategy to behavior design to content design. So it kind of connects lots of perspectives in a simple model. And it's also a tool for prioritization. So this tool helps you cut the crap and focus on what's most important and get the organization along with you on that journey. So first and foremost, this is a tool for cooperation. So it's a simple model that anyone can understand, and that's why it works. That's why it's so powerful to connect the organization internally. But so the model is simple, but I like to just take a little step back and look at the kind of the challenges we're facing. I guess most of you today are content people, content professionals in some way, content designers, content strategists. There might also be some user experience designers, but and project managers and lots of people who can take advantage of this. But from a content perspective, coming from a content and user experience perspective, these are kind of the challenges that I've felt in these last 25 years, and that are kind of timeless. So you're working with content and user experience is this kind of Sisyphean job. So you're kind of pushing content and strategy and trying to push the organization in the right direction. And it's a lonesome job, and it's a hard job. And when you push this stone up the hill, it kind of just falls back again. So this is how I've felt many times, and I guess others have as well. But we look behind it. So what are the kind of the causes for our problems? And in the Bible, there's this story about the Babel Tower, where humanity tries to build a tower into heaven. And God in his vengeance strike down upon them and gives them different languages, so they cannot cooperate. And this is how things work today. So we have in the organization, we have silos, and we have different competencies, and we have levels in the organization, and we all have different terminology. So we speak so designers talk about mock-ups, and marketeers talk about conversion, optimization, and inbound, and you have all these kinds of methods. But if you're a lawyer or some other kind of subject matter expert in the organization, you have a different language, and you also have different goals. So people have different goals for what makes great solutions. And this is the Babel confusion that we're facing. We're just talking past each other. And also a thing I've felt many times is that when we're working on one channel, one technology, or one product at the time. Whether we're working with social media, or we're working with the website, or we're working with a single product, a single contact point. And the problem with this, and we have to do this in order to be effective and efficient, but what we do is we lose sight of the overall picture of the customer journey and the customer's perspective. So when we're kind of focused on one thing, we lose the connections that are important. And why do we lose this oversight? Of course, because of accidental prioritization. Because each and every day we're facing fire extinguishing. There are always something that we have to prioritize. And those are whims from the top of the organization and also from the sides that we have to prioritize this. No, we were supposed to prioritize this, but this is more important. Okay, so everything is important. And when everything is important, then nothing is important. So that's a problem. If you ever been working on a website redesign, then you have probably kind of run into this problem. I won't take the full story. You can look it up. But the problem is that when we are doing redesigns of websites or intranets or whatever, we kind of always get lost in the structure. We are not able to work on the content and the things that are really important to users. So I'll tell that story another time, but the thing is that we do all these redesigns continuously, and we make the exact same mistakes over and over again, and we never learn. So doing a website redesign is one typical scenario where the core model is used to prioritize. So we redesign our websites every 5 years, but nowadays we run in a product organization world. So people don't redesign every 5 years, they relaunch 5 times a day. So we're in this high-speed environment, and it feels like it's just this high-speed train flying by all the time. So we're working with blindfolds and do fast launches, and we say we do it to experiment, but usually that doesn't. We don't have time to learn. We don't have time to get the oversight. We don't have time to prioritize. So that's a problem. And then there's content. I guess all of us here, we care about content. We understand why content is important. And content is important because it's what matters to users. This is the reason people come to your website or use your product. So very often the content is the only thing that the user wants. You just want an answer to a question, and that's content. And yet we're kind of working, so design is very tangible. Everyone can have an opinion about colors and logos and templates and whatever. And technology is very tangible as well. We understand we have technology, but content falls between these cracks. So it comes last in our, it's the most important, but it comes last in our priorities. Why is that? And the final kind of challenge I want to raise is one of digital pollution. So we live in a world where we're boiling the planet, and actually the IT industry is a large part of that, because we're producing content all the time, and we have this digital waste culture where we publish and publish and publish more and more content, big data, etc. And this digital waste culture is stored in, not in the sky, it's on big physical server farms on Earth that spews out pollution, and we're a part of that problem. When we can't prioritize, then we increase our carbon footprint as well. So this is, we can be a part of this, a solution to this. And it's just one simple insight behind the core model, and that's kind of flipping the perspective. Instead of thinking about everything at once, we pick one answer, one possible answer to use a question as a starting point. This is the core. This is the one thing that we are focusing on now. And of course, that's prioritization. So in order to know where to start, we have to know the user needs, we have to know the strategy, but where these overlap, those are our cores. That's where we should have our focus and attention in order to solve the most important user tasks and reach the most important business objectives. So these cores, usually thinking about them as core pages, the most important pages on the website, the ones that users care about. And usually when, as a user, I come to a website, I'm only interested in one page, one contact point, one piece of information, and I don't care about the rest. The rest of the website is just in the way. It's just ruining my user experience. So people have one or maybe a few contact points that they are interested in, and if you look at it this way, if you turn the perspective and we start with these answers, then we can flip the perspective and we can think about, okay, so for this page, how do people come? It's we have social media, we have Google search, of course, we have newsletters, we have all kind of inbound channels, and we have information architecture, and people can have many entrances to this core, and those are the inward paths. I'll come back to how that works. People have an inward path to our core. And the postulate in the core model is that if we know what the user is coming for, what the user task is, then we can also look at our objectives and design for the next part of the customer journey. We can design the forward path. We can design the inward path, we can design the core, and we can design the forward path. But the starting point is a core of some kind. Usually, often, it's a web page. It could be a process checkout, or it could be any kind of product. It could be an app. It could be, in fact, anything that answers a concrete, important user task, and at the same time fulfills one or more business objectives. That's the kind of the definition. We have to have both. And like I said, this doesn't have to be a web page at all. It could be any kind of contact point in a customer journey. It could be an email that you send from customer service. It could be a physical product. It could be a PowerPoint slide. It could be anything that answers a user task and reaches a business objective. But it has to be prioritized as the core. So what we're talking about when we're talking about cores are the most important meeting points between the user and the organization. It's where the action happens. This is where user experience happens. This is where digital strategy happens. And this is those are the cores. That's where we should focus our attention. And so the core model, we have to start by prioritizing cores. But when you have a hypothesis, so this is we think this is an important answer to a user question, then we stop thinking about solution, but we do the rest of the canvas. We ask ourselves a few questions before we come back to the solution, because it's always very easy to jump to a solution. That's what we do all the time. Instead, we should take a small step back and ask ourselves, for this core, for this particular point, who are the users? For this page, not for the entire website, but for this specific page, then you can prioritize. That's an entirely different way of thinking about target groups. Instead of thinking about everyone, for this page, who are the target users? And then it's the kind of the prioritization mechanism here. So that's the user tasks. What are people coming to your core to do? What are the questions for this particular piece on the internet or whatever? So the user tasks are the key to prioritization. So that's the two first questions. And now we shift gears. So now we're thinking about business objectives. But we're not talking about the lofty, abstract strategy that nobody remembers. We're thinking about how can we make key performance indicators? How can we measure actions on this page and relate that to strategy? I call this micro strategy. It's strategy where the action happens, not in the boardroom, but in the actual line of fire. So, but again, looking at strategy and looking at the core, it's much easier to prioritize, and people can join in on this journey. And also, a very important point here is that there is a connection between user experience and strategy, and that connection is that if we solve the user task first, then it's much easier to reach our business objectives. And this is, so if we know everything about the user, but we don't have strategic leverage to do something about it, then we don't have what we need. And if we have a digital strategy that doesn't solve user tasks, we're just as shortcome. So we have to solve the user tasks in order to reach the business goals. So that's kind of the top floor of the core model. And then the main floor is like a mini customer journey, where you start by defining the inward paths. So how should people find the core content we are making? what are the Google search words? What are the scenarios? What are the cross-channel strategy? How do we create inbound traffic? How should our information architecture reflect this? So it's everything that can drive traffic to the core. And then before we come to the solution, we think about the forward paths. So that's what will happen next. So if you look at the strategic objectives, what does that mean in terms of calls to action? What is the scenario that we want? And so that this page is not the end stop on the internet, but we have a user experience, a customer journey that is thought through. And then when we have all these other pieces of the puzzle, then we come back to the core content. And this is the common sense part of it. So if we have made this journey through these simple questions, then we can come back to the solution and find the optimal solution to all of these things. So we know the questions that we need to answer. We need this, we have the search words, we have the personas, we have what we need to create good solutions. So those are the 6 elements of the core model. Simple. Everyone can understand this in 5 minutes. Everyone. And yet it has so many perspectives built into it. So one way of looking at it is that this is content design. I guess Sarah Winters defined it as giving people what they need, where they need it, in the format they want it. And this is what the core model is about. So the model has a built-in user perspective. We have a user task, and an inward path. The inward, we can't decide the inward path. That's up to the user, but we can design for the inward path. And it also has this strategic perspective. So we're defining the key results that we want, and we translate that into calls to action and how we need to prioritize forward paths. And then there's this mini customer journey through a contact point. So we don't look at the entire customer journey, but we zoom in on one point, and then we look at the inward and forward paths, and then we can build a larger customer journey over time. And other perspectives that are built in is inbound marketing. That's what inward paths are about. And the forward paths are really about behavioral design. How can we use our knowledge to steer the user to the best for the user and ourselves? And there are many more perspectives on this as well, but in total, this gives a holistic perspective on the digital channels we are working on. A holistic perspective that anyone can understand. One way of thinking of it is that this is design thinking. So design thinking is a word for getting the entire organization to think like a designer. And what I found is that I think that any great designer is using the core model, whether they know it or not. Because good designers think about users, they think about strategy, they think about the customer journey. And so this is design thinking in a way that is simplified so that anyone can understand it. It's common sense put into a system. And because it's common sense, you can also use it for anchoring. So if you get people to work together with this format, then you can have a shared understanding of how things should work and how we need to work to get the effects of this. And so that cooperation typically happens in what we call a core workshop, which is that we gather people in a room, traditionally with a simple piece of paper, a core sheet, and we make core pairs that are across competency, across silos, across levels in the hierarchy, so that this is also a silo crushing exercise. So, but we get people to see our products and services from a customer's perspective. And we give them a common language to discuss and have a shared understanding of this. And we are concrete, so that we don't think about kind of abstract things, but we're making concrete solutions. So that's the typical traditional core workshop. But obviously there are also digital templates. Through the years, I've run hundreds of these workshops, and what I find is that lately that a kind of a hybrid format is good, where you use the digital templates in a physical setting. But it's still core pairs, and there are some other elements to the core workshop. Is that it's very paced working. You give people a certain amount of time, so we have time pressure, so that people don't get lost in discussions, but actually work concretely on solutions. And then, so this model in its simplicity has, it's actually compatible with more or less any other method in a designer's toolbox. So what we see here is people using a persona and a customer journey to pick target groups and user tasks. And this works with personas, customer journeys. We can use empathy maps. Top tasks is an important perspective. We can get user tasks from jobs to be done. We can get the business objectives from OKR. We can do business model canvas, because the core that we're working on is really the value proposition. So it kind of connects to these methods. It's all about search engine optimization. It's all about content marketing. It's all about conversion optimization and behavior design, and it's easy to make a minimal viable products. It's a great framework for pair writing, and it's also a great starting point for doing content modeling. So it's kind of this simple piece of Lego that actually connects to all the other tools in your toolbox, and it makes these connections easier for everyone to understand. So the core model is about taking a small step back, not getting lost in abstract and 10-meter long customer journeys, but taking a small step back for what we're working with. And when we're starting something, that we get out of the starting gate in the right direction. And this is kind of an Esperanto for cooperation in the organization. And it puts content in the center, because what we're working on in the end is content in a larger perspective, obviously, than just text on a page, but it's content that answers users' questions, users' needs. And by involving the organization in this way, you can also show the value of your work to the rest of the organization, because they see that this content is important. It actually relates to the strategy, and we have to think about users, and okay, someone should be paid to do this job. So it's easy to use this to involve the organization. So with this workshop technique, you can kind of take a lead, engage the organization, and actually getting things done, because we can have a shared understanding of this. And in the end, to make great stuff that people want, because that's what we're all here for, isn't it? So that's the core model, and the title of the webinar is Strategic Content Design. So that's a process. I use that as a label for the process that I use, where the core model is kind of at the center. But before we start using the core model, we have to prioritize. We have to know the user needs, and we have to know the strategy, and we need to prioritize cores. So there's kind of some activities related to that. So we have to prioritize, and then we have to cooperate. And cooperation happens typically in a core workshop, where we get the organization engaged in actually making solutions that they are a part of themselves, that they have invested in, and making it easier to have a shared understanding. And then we have to fix it, because this is a very fun workshop. Everyone likes to be in a core workshop, but the point of a core workshop is to create action cards, concrete actions that has to be done in order for this to become reality. So it's a very action-oriented workshop, where you end up with a task list that you can use to prioritize. And this is why project managers love this method as well. So that's kind of the framework. See, we're running a little bit on time here, but this is the example from the book of how you can use this. There are kind of pedagogical examples in the book, and we're using a car insurance as an example. So you can use this to prioritize, and then you can use this to also create a core flow, a mini customer journey from different contact points, and you can build on this. So it's a very flexible tool in that respect. So, and that's about what I managed to cover. So if you want to know, if you want to learn this method, if you want to use it in an organization, I obviously recommend that you join this core model workshop training on June 27th, where we'll delve into an Miro board on Google Meet, working with concrete cores to get this understanding of how this works and how you can involve the organization in using this model, and how to fill it out, and the tips and the techniques you use to get people started, and not having them derail on some things, and the prioritization and the action cards and all of this. So you can find information on that on thecoremodel.com/training. And it's just for 12 people, because we're working in breakout rooms in Google Meet. So, and I want to be able to join all the breakout rooms, so that I can be close to how you're working. And that's why it's only 12 spots, or 10 spots, because there are there are only 10 spots left. Yeah, then this is the workshop that I've been running at Confab for the last 2 years, and I don't know if Anne Key is here, but maybe she could testify to that. This is an entertaining workshop. It's a fast-paced workshop. It's interactive, and it really teaches you how to use this core model. And also people saying that it's incredibly satisfying to take complex subjects down to earth and use it to involve people, everyone, in working with digital services. So that's the core workshop training on June 27th. I'll give you the tips and tools and all the templates and all the techniques that you need to run a successful core workshop in just 3 hours. 12 participants, and there's a registration deadline on June 17th. So you can look that up on thecoremodel.com/training. Okay, so we're on time. It's 6:45 in Norwegian, and we'll answer some questions. I don't know if people have okay, applause. That's nice. So I had a few questions beforehand, and let's see how many questions do we have. We have, yeah, quite a few questions. So let's just get started then. These are a few of the questions that came in beforehand. Do you recommend using the core model for larger products or smaller projects? I have an owner who's complaining that they want their content structure in a very particular way, which is a very small piece of a larger product there. Should I use the model on only that small area or use it to prove the larger product area? And that's the kind of the beauty of the core model, is that you can do both. I typically think about it as working top down or bottom up. So you can start if you have a hypothesis, you can start out with the core and just start working. And from that, you can see what other cores and how to, and then you can get started. Or you can run what I call a priority workshop in order to take a core area. If it's an intranet or a section on the website or a new product or whatever, just how to kind of identify the cores and how to so you can typically use it on the small area just to get started, and then you can, or you could also work with this prioritization workshop on a larger area. So hopefully that is a bit of a yeah. Couldn't attend the webinar. Will we get the recording? Of course, I'll send that to everyone. How is the core model used in product environments? Typically, it's used if you have product teams that working on kind of the same customer journey, and you mix the teams so that they see how the products relate. So product teams can be silos, and getting them to work together is one of the uses of the core model. Will the workshop training be recorded, and how long will the resources be available? Yes, of course, it will be recorded, and I don't know, yeah, we will have all the templates and all the examples and all the resources, and everything will be in this Miro board, and you also get the recording as well. So where were we? Yeah, well, maybe we should look at some of the questions that have been asked in the chat. It's quite a lot, so maybe we'll start. Theodora says, how is semiotics in marketing, and is it related to the core model, given it's all about meaning and understanding, both across the organization and with external stakeholders? Semiotics. I haven't done semiotics in 20 years since I worked on studied media and communication. But semiotics is it's how to signal meaning. So yeah, how do I answer that? It's obviously it's about meaning. It's about creating meaning in content and having a shared understanding. So it's kind of the semiotics of it is perhaps that you get this shared starting point, and you can create these signals across the organization. So yeah, that's would love to discuss that more with you, Theodora. You recommend only running a core workshop when you have the opportunity before a project begins. If a project is already underway, is it worth taking a step back to run a core workshop, or might that be counterproductive? Again, I think both can work. So typically you run it at the start of the project. That's the typical use. But often when you're kind of running into problems, people are kind of don't have a shared understanding. Let's just take a little step back and fill out this model and see how are what we're doing the right thing. So the core model is just not a workshop technique across the organization. It's also a thinking tool that you can use for yourself. So at any time when you're kind of stuck, just fill out the core sheet, and it will help you see a better perspective. So I wouldn't say it's counterproductive at all, but of course it's more difficult when you have a fixed solution. So you have to have a mindset that we think, okay, this is what we think now. Let's take a little step back and see if we are on the right track. AP, do you recommend using the core model with waterfall or agile approaches? I'm not a fan of waterfall, and this kind of the content strategy. The process that I showed is not a waterfall. It's not a linear process. There are kind of activities that has to happen all the time. So you always need to prioritize and cooperate and fix things. So obviously it works with a waterfall method, but I think it's best with an agile approach where you are flexible and you can make changes fast. So the core model is great for finding those opportunities in an agile approach. So this is there's quite a lot of agile coaches who uses this method to get a team to cooperate or to get cooperation across teams as well. So it fits very nicely in agile approaches as well. Simon asks, how does a core model differ when you're looking at an intranet? I think it's more or less the same. The core model is kind of generic. It's universal. You always have users. You'll always have tasks. You will always have a strategy. People have to find the content, and something should happen. So whether that's an intranet page or a web page, or if it's a kind of a system, a login or functionality as well. On the inside of an organization, that doesn't matter. You still have users. So and that the tail of the typical website is that I mentioned is just as much about intranets. It's the same challenges that we have to get people to cooperate in order to prioritize so that they understand what's important and then work together to fix that. So the internet is just the same. How do we facilitate a workshop with different departments? Sales, C-level people, marketing. We usually have different objectives and vocabularies. Yes, and that's the point. People have different objectives and different vocabularies, and also different levels of digital maturity. So someone is in on the user perspective, others not so much. Some people understand the strategy, others not. So, but having people run through these 6 questions, you kind of establish a common language, and you include all the perspectives in that solution as well. So marketing, obviously, inward paths, C-level, business objectives, sales, forward paths. So it's something for everyone in the core model. So and people have different objectives and different vocabularies, but this kind of creates a shared understanding. So I would definitely try a workshop with that group. Absolutely. What you do when you know your clients need a brand refresh before you ever begin thinking about content marketing. I often feel like I'm being asked to dress Cinderella, but her ugly sister shows up in the dressing room. That's a great metaphor. So brand refresh. I've been working with branding for quite a few years. And what is a brand? What is design? What is content? And I'm not sure I understand your question 100%, but I think that a branding process should indeed start with the content, because that's where things happen. That's where the brand, a brand and user experience, I don't separate those, because the branding happens in the user experience at the core. So using the core model as a starting point for a branding process is also absolutely interesting, and you can think about branding in core in content marketing as well. So I'm not sure I understand your question completely, but it can relate quite well with a branding process as well. How long should I run a core workshop? Should each point take a day or an hour? Yeah, so this is, again, it's a flexible format. So you can use, typically it's a half day or a full day. But you can run it in an hour or two as well. So, but it depends how much time, how much resources do you have, and how can and what is the digital maturity in an organization. So you always have to plan the core workshop accordingly to the situation at hand, obviously. So but half a day I think is a good starting point. But if you can do a full day, that's better. And if you only have 2 hours, that's possible as well. Can you talk a little about how this approach might look if you were designing an entire application versus a new feature for an existing app? Thanks. An application, I would look at that as a core area, which is kind of when you have several cores that you need to identify. So using this prioritization workshop techniques to identify the most important part of the applications. So what are the main user tasks? How should the application respond, and how could these user tasks be solved in different cores in the application? So I would look at that as a core area, and it could be quite interesting to run core workshops on the different areas, different cores. Michelle, okay, we're almost on time, but I'm in a team of one in content design. What suggestions do you have for convincing various stakeholders that the workshop would have value to them? Yeah, that's always the problem. Convincing stakeholders and management to run good processes. So there are several approaches. You can use the viral one, which is just starting with maybe a small group, just work with one stakeholder and fill out the model just to, because people kind of like this. When they use it, they see the value. And then you can take it step by step, and over time, maybe introduce this as a workshop method. So that's kind of the bottom-up approach. You can hire me. I can come in and tell them how to use it. It's not always that easy to be a prophet in your own country. So that's what I do. I come in and I can facilitate processes if that's needed. And there are also workshop techniques here as well. This is kind of the things that we delve into in the workshop training. Would you also fit content governance work in a priority step before doing the core model? I typically think about content governance with the action cards, that we always discuss how can we govern this content after. So that's a key part of the fix-it. Can't make the 27th. Are you planning to do another workshop this year? Yes, if people want, I'll do as many workshops as you want. So absolutely. But I hope to see you there. So that's about it. Bye from Emma. I'm from Sabina, Theodora, Denise. Okay. Thank you. Have a nice evening or morning or day or whatever where you are. And hope to see you on the core workshop training on June 27th.